When I met Dr. Gardner, he was already trained neurosurgeon and had one more year of his residency to go. It was instantaneous chemistry. We just saw each other as just great friends, and he was the funniest guy I had ever met, actually. And we were engaged within a month, and we got married 3 months after we met. It was a very whirlwind, dynamic courtship. The beginning of the next year was his last year of residency, and he had to keep in touch with the draft board in Lowell all the time, because it was at that time the Vietnam War was waging, and he was waiting for a draft notice, and they promised him he could finish his residency and then he would be drafted. Well, after a very nervous year, we finally got the note from the draft board, and the time had come. And so he went to basic training, and I went and had a baby, our first, and stayed home with my parents while he went off to Camp Bullis to learn how to be a soldier. Then when we came back from, when we finally got together again after his training, we were stationed in Fort Lewis, Washington. And he thought that he would have to go to Vietnam with all the other neurosurgeons of his year and his age and his time in the Army. And we were just waiting for those orders to come. Months went by, and one night he called me and said, "You'll never believe what happened. I got orders to go to Valley Forge, Pennsylvania." So I said, "Valley Forge, Pennsylvania?" Well, you do what the Army tells you to do, and so after they had moved us baggage, and baby all the way across the continent, we now went 3.5 months later right back again to the east. And it turned out it was a half an hour from where his brother lived and his mother lived, and it looked like he knew some general in the Army that was watching over him, which wasn't the case at all. But there was one problem. Valley Forge General Hospital, the hospital there, was a rehabilitation hospital. It wasn't for neurological patients who who needed surgery. It was for neurological patients who had had surgery, and they had had their definitive surgeries in Vietnam or in California or wherever base they had come from, and they were now being transferred here for rehabilitation. Well, Howard was beyond sad and upset about this. How am I going to retain my neurosurgical skills? How am I going to stay agile? And I'm going to forget all the procedures that I knew. And for 2 years, he was going to be at this post. So he was very concerned. However, it turned out to be a very, very interesting time for him, because he learned about the wonders of rehabilitation. While we were at Valley Forge, Dr. Gardner didn't even realize that he was learning so much about rehab, because he was doing it every day, and he started to take it for granted that people who came without legs would be walking again soon. People who were in wheelchairs would be up and walking soon. And one of the most dramatic things that we saw there was an officer who won the 3rd highest Army commendation and a full three-star general flew into an open field in a helicopter to make the presentation. He was a paraplegic and only had the use of his arms. However, he, with the use of crutches, he managed to swing through, and bracing of his other limbs, he managed to swing through the legs so that he could plant the crutches and swing, plant the crutches and swing, and land on the legs. And he did that, crossed the field to where the general had emerged from the helicopter and received his medal. There wasn't a dry eye in the field. Everybody was just so touched by this. And to this day, I think that image is in my husband's head. And that was one of the great motivating images, I think, that made him realize how important rehab can be. When he was a surgeon at Columbia, all they did was surgery, and the patient would return home after the surgery. There was no such period of rehab the way they have now. And when you think about it, and certainly it seems very obvious now that people need this ability to take care of themselves when they get home, and they need to be able to take charge of their lives again. But it wasn't happening in those years. The first year of my husband's practice was very hectic. He was just getting everything organized and trying to tell patients that he was here and doing surgeries again. And he was very concerned about rehab, because there just was no such thing. And he knew that medicine could be so much better. He had come back to the Merrimack Valley, his place of birth, and he wanted to make things better in his old home area. He's originally from Lowell, and there was something about his home that was very special to him. So he went to the hospitals one by one and asked them about the idea of converting some of their beds to rehab beds. And each time he would come away with, well, maybe, we'll think about it, or some of them were definitely no's. We don't want to change our obstetrics to rehab. And they really didn't know much about rehab themselves. And after about 2 years of doing this, when in his spare time, I should say, he came to the conclusion that maybe we should try to do it ourselves. So he spoke to some of the fellows in his medical group, and he also, and they decided to file a letter of intent with the state saying that they would like to build a rehabilitation hospital. They needed to obtain a certificate of need. And in the meantime, we found out that in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, the Alexander Eastman Hospital had been taken over by Hospital Corporation of America. So we thought possibly Hospital Corporation of America might want to build a rehab, and they could manage this whole process. So we got in touch with them. They came down and met with us, and they were very positive. And then they invited us to Nashville, to their corporate offices, and they wined and dined us there, and we had a wonderful time in Nashville. And then we came back, and about 2 weeks later we got a phone call from them. They're not interested in rehab. So that just took all the wind out of our sails. we thought we were done for. But it only meant that we had to work harder on the political process, work harder on this certificate of need, and we would have to get it by ourselves. So that's what we did. It was a political process right from the get-go. Myself and another woman went to all different businesses and stores and got letters of support. My husband went to the various hospitals, got letters of support. Whoever we could get letters of support from, we asked them, and we have all the old letters, and it's really nice to read them nowadays too. Afterwards, there were hearings on the proposal, and all our enemies would come out of the woodwork for these hearings, and they would testify and say all sorts of false, bad things about us, and especially about my husband. About I don't know where they would even cook up these things to say, and I found it very upsetting. And going home one night in the car, I started crying because I was so insulted and upset. So he said to me, "Don't take it personally. They're not out to hurt you. They are merely out to hurt the project. And this is a good project, and we're going to win this thing, and we're just going to keep going." And he just had his eye on the prize right from the start, and he was able to zero in and get his thoughts together and get his group working in that direction. And sure enough, finally we persevered and won the battle, and the next thing you know, there was a big headline in the newspaper: "Neurosurgeon to see dream come true." Dr. Gardner is my hero. Dr. Gardner is very prescient. He almost can read the future. He seems to have a knack, medically that is, he seems to have a knack for picking out all the medical trends and an ability to see something that is meaningful out rather than something that's going to be discarded. Whenever anything bad would happen, he would brush it off, and he would stay focused, and in his own tenacious way, he would get right through and back on course. And he's got an amazing leadership capacity. I can't imagine that we would have had so many accreditations and all the different areas that we've branched off into, like pediatric rehabilitation and stroke rehabilitation. We also have home care now. And home care is a wonderful thing because you go right from the hospital here to your home, and therapists come to your home to take care of you. And when you're well enough to start going outside your home, you can go to Northeast Outpatient Services. Our motto is rebuilding lives through hope, compassion, and excellence. We have an incredible staff. The more I get to know them, each and every one is an amazing person. There's something in their hearts that speaks to them and tells them that they love humanity, because nobody could be as caring and thoughtful as these therapists and nurses. I speak from firsthand opinion. because I was a patient myself twice now at Northeast Rehab. And I can't say enough about the dedication of the nurses and the therapists and the skill of the therapists as well. My goodness, I went out of here having had all sorts of different therapies, including hydrotherapy in the pool, which helped me tremendously. So I think to myself, what if we didn't have a Northeast Rehab here? Where would I have gone? What would I have done? Whenever I am approached by people in the community and they tell me about their experiences at Northeast Rehab, I really feel so proud to be part of the institution that makes people feel better and be better as well. The last thing I would have ever expected was to be a patient myself here, but it happened. I had an accident down in Virginia, and I would go to a rehab in Virginia for a few days afterwards, after I broke my hip, and had to have a new hip replacement. And then I was flown up here, came up here to Northeast Rehab, and felt like I was home. And especially since I knew everybody, and but the caliber of the people is just so terrific, and the care, and even the food. The future is bright for Northeast Rehab. We've got a beautiful new building in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We are just about finished with our renovations in Salem, New Hampshire, and we're in the process of opening a new location in New Hampshire. We have some phenomenal young therapists that have come to work for us and are cognizant of new therapies and new techniques. And the horizon is very bright, with hope for more development in rehab as the years go by. And I'm happy to be a part of it.